Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome to the New York iMapinvasives monthly webinar series. Today our topic is documenting infestations in iMapinvasives before and after treatment. And so that's our topic for September call today. And speaking today, we have Jennifer Dean, the invasive species biologist with the New York Natural Heritage Program, as well as myself, the end user support specialist for the invasive species database at the New York Natural Heritage Program. And I'll encourage everyone you can introduce yourselves in the chat box if you're interested. And if you have any questions that come up throughout the webinar, you can put those in the chat box too. And we might answer some as we go, and other ones we'll save to the end where we'll have a question and answer period. So I'll get started. So for anyone new to us, the New York Natural Heritage Program's mission is to facilitate the conservation of New York's biodiversity by providing comprehensive information and expertise on rare species and natural ecosystems. So we do a lot of work with rare species, but since invasive species pose such a huge threat to biodiversity, we also have the Invasive Species Database Program. And that's where I work. So we administer iMapinvasives, as well as we are involved with a couple other projects across the state. You can learn more about NYNHP at our website at nynhp.org. And so for anyone new to IMAP, this is an online database used by several jurisdictions across North America. Here in New York, it's the official centralized invasive species database to support PRISMs, state agencies, and other partners working on invasive species issues. So you can report and track species distributions and generate reports. You can sign up for early detection email alerts. And one thing we'll be talking about in particular today is that you can track the effectiveness of control efforts and the results of those control efforts. And I mentioned the PRISMs. Can't talk about invasive species management in New York without mentioning the PRISMs. They're a really great network of organizations across the state. So it's divided up into 8 different regions. I really encourage you to figure out which PRISM you're in and connect with them because they have a lot of great work going on having to do with invasive species. So education initiatives, early detection and monitoring, management, all sorts of things. And so for iMapinvasives, we're a database. You might be wondering where the data actually comes from. So at first, it came from existing data sets. We kind of gathered together all of the different invasive species data sets for New York State that were existing at the time. And then since then, in the past few years, the most important data source has been data entered by community scientists and natural resource professionals in real time. So data submitted online or using one of our field data collection tools. So we thank everyone across the state who has been submitting data to iMapinvasives. We really rely on you to keep our database current and up to date on where species occur at this time. So why are we here today? What is the main topic of discussion? So we all know that invasive species infestations tend to spread across space over time. And we also know that there are a lot of management efforts, and ideally these slow the spread or reduce infestation sizes. But do we have information that can actually prove that? And can we answer that question at the local site level? And can we answer that question regionally? So do these efforts actually slow the spread or reduce infestations? And one really useful piece of iMapinvasives is that it's really set up so that you can actually track this sort of thing and try to answer these sorts of questions. So, so for instance, in IMAP, you can log on, go onto the map, and you can document an invasive species presence. And so those are green in our database. So on this hypothetical map, that green dot would represent where an invasive species is occurring. And so maybe it would be just a single point when you see it the first time. If you went back and surveyed each year you might see it start to spread, and you might see it start to spread even more the year after that. And eventually you might be able to perform some sort of management. So say it's a mile a minute spreading across this area, and you get a group to go in and pull all of that out. So then you can actually record that treatment effort in iMapinvasives, and the next year you can record how much of the species comes back. So ideally you would want that, ideally that infestation would be getting smaller as you're treating it. And you can record that, and you could perform another treatment and record that. And eventually the ideal is that you get to the point where the species is not coming back for several years. And so you can actually record those not detected records in iMapinvasives as well. So the system is very well set up for tracking your management efforts and the effectiveness of those management efforts. So if you are working for an organization that performs invasive species treatments, so stuff like invasive species pulls, maybe even biocontrol releases, we have this sort of framework where people can enter a pre-treatment survey record and indicate some information about the infestation. Then they can record the treatment, and then they can record a post-treatment survey. So what does the infestation look like after the treatment or the year after? And they can record that size and density information again. And so you can kind of trace out change over time in response to treatment. And anyone who's on this call who does not conduct invasive species treatments, you are very valuable to this effort as well. So anyone can contribute. So for example, there's a field in presence records where you can indicate whether the distribution of an invasive plant is sparse, dense, I think it goes trace, sparse, dense, monoculture. And so we can use that with records through time to see if there are changes in distribution throughout time. And also anyone can record if they encounter a biocontrol agent on an invasive species, on an invasive plant typically. And so we'll be going into more detail about that, but this is just to sort of frame everything that's to come. And I also just wanted to mention that we do participate, NYNHP participates in this metrics work group that the New York Invasive Species Research Institute has been organizing. It's pretty new, but one of the things we discuss is how to document and assess the effectiveness of invasive species treatment. So we are constantly thinking about this, and there are potential additions that could be made in the future. And so for our agenda today, I just gave an introduction. So next I'll be handing it over to Jen to talk a little bit more about the sorts of information you can record. And she's actually going to show you how you do that on the online interface. Then I'll talk a little bit about IMAP data collection tools. And Jen will give a call for data, and then we will wrap up and answer any questions you have. So I'll hand it over to Jen.
Great, thanks, Mitch. All right, so Mitch gave a great overview of why we are looking for post-treatment and pre-treatment information documented into iMapinvasives, and getting that data is always the first step. I'll talk a little bit later about ideas that we have about how we could analyze this data to help give us a better picture on the on a bigger statewide or regional scale on how effective our treatments are, changes over time and things like that. But we can't even get to that point if we don't have the data documented yet. So this is the first step. And today what I'm going to show you is what we have so far in iMapinvasives. Like it's, we have a lot of these standardized and, somewhat simplified data fields where you can enter this information, and, with the hopes of having good ways to analyze that, to be able to answer some of these questions or show success or show that things didn't work. But yeah, starting with what we have right now. And Mitch also mentioned that there's other efforts going on that we're also very involved with, like Misery's metrics project, where they're looking at different ways to determine the effectiveness, like more of a collecting certain types of metrics for determining success. So what I'll dive into here, though, is like I said, what we currently have. And so IMAP is very well set up to do assessments of an infestation, essentially. So if you get to a site and you find a new infestation, new species, you can enter a presence record into iMapinvasives that documents, okay, yes, this species is here at this point in time. And I'm going to walk through some of that. You can put in details about the extent and the distribution of that invasive species. And then for organizations that are taking that next step to treat that infestation, of course, there's lots of detailed information you can enter about the treatment. And then this next step that we're always encouraging our partners to do, and I know our partners always do want to do, but sometimes like funding, say, only covers the treatment part, but doesn't cover the post-treatment monitoring part. And I know a lot of partners are getting through different hurdles to get more post-treatment data. And that's when you visit the site, of course, after you've done the treatment, and ideally for multiple years. You might, if you visit something, a week after you pull it, then you could say, hey, look, it's all gone. I have had success. But we all know that there's going to be, a seed bank for plants. There might be, other propagules or such in the soil for some insects. They hide really well. So it's ideally coming back year after year and determining whether or not that species is gone because of that treatment or reduced. And so next, Mitch. So the first scenario is if you come back to the site after you've treated it, you still find that target species there, that target invasives was not completely killed off by that treatment. And so in that case, you enter another presence record. And so you go through those same assessments. Next. And there is an option within these presence records that if you do find a biocontrol agent at that site, you can actually capture that data there. You can say, which biological control agent was found on that invasive species, probably either because you released it, maybe that was the treatment was a biocontrol, or it might have spread from its original release. If any of you were on the webinar a couple hours ago, Stacy Endres gave this elegant presentation about purple loosestrife biocontrol, and the Gallicera beetle has spread from those infestation, or the release sites, I should say, on its own over the course of the last 25 years quite successfully. And so you might find these biocontrol agents on the host that you're capturing that presence record on. Next. But the other scenario is when you come back to visit a site after treatment is that you didn't find the species. You've searched and searched for that specific target species and you don't find it. And so then you can enter a not detected record. Next. And when you enter a not detected record, you can, there is a field that is reason for not detecting. And one of the reasons is that you can select is presumed eliminated due to treatment. And you can tell, we have that, those kind of words of caution in there. We presume that it's eliminated. We're not making the assumption that it's definitely gone at that point, but you can select that to start that process of documenting your first follow-up. And, hopefully year after year, you can go back and hopefully keep not finding it, not detecting that species there. Next. And for either of the scenarios where you enter either the target species was found or the target species was not found with that presence or not detected record, there are additional data fields within IMAP called the post-treatment follow-up fields. And these are actually triggered within IMAP when you have one of those two record types entered on top of a treatment record for the same species. So the programming recognizes that you're returning to that site after treatment has been done, and it asks you if you would like to fill in more follow-up information. All right, next. All right, so at this point, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and jump into iMapinvasives. So Mitch, I think you have to unshare yours. There you go. Perfect. All right. Let me just. All right, so I am logged into iMapinvasives. Hopefully all of you on this call today have an account and have been in here quite a bit. If you don't, there's lots of information on our website, and Mitch will have some on the last slide. We'll have some websites you can go to get an account. But I'm assuming that everyone is familiar with iMapinvasives. I'm zoomed into the default view of the data here for New York State, and thinking about examples of where there's been a lot of activity with invasive species for both, presence and treatment and not detected. And one that always comes to mind is the hemlock woolly adelgid, because there's been a lot of effort on the statewide level and with the PRISM partners to be tracking hemlock woolly adelgid, because here's the current distribution within New York State that we know of. And you can see there's a bit of a leading edge. So the infestation extends south along the Appalachian Range. And so the first sightings in the Adirondacks have just been over the last couple of years. And so this is a big statewide effort to try to slow that spread to the Adirondacks and the St. Lawrence region, so forth. So these orange hexagons, or the circles within the hexagons that you can see, are the confirmed records. I can also turn on the not detected records. And this will illustrate just how much our PRISM partners have been looking for hemlock woolly adelgid. It's really exciting to see all these not detected records, because this is showing that somebody has gone to a hemlock tree or a hemlock stand and specifically looked for hemlock woolly adelgid and did not find it there. So it's very exciting. We also have a number of treatments which get a little obscured by the not detected records, so I'll go ahead and turn those off. So we do have treatments that are visible. What I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in to these newer infestations here in the Adirondacks. The first infestation in this region popped up, I believe, in 2017 in the Lake George area. We'll let this data or the map draw here in a second. There we go. So you can see these presence records. If I zoom in here closer to Lake George, this is the Prospect Mountain infestation that popped up about 4 or 5 years ago. I'm going to go ahead and turn on the not detected records as well, keeping in mind that we are filtered for just that one species. And so this site gives us a really good example of how this information can be documented and displayed over time. And so I have this area here where I can use my identify measure tool. And let's say I draw a polygon around the area that I want to look at those detailed records. So I can say, see what's here. And what that's going to do is pop up a little table that gives me the confirmed presences, the not detected species, and the treatments for hemlock woolly adelgid. So if I look at the confirmed presences here, I'll nudge my map up so you can see. When I click on those, you can see that blue box is kind of highlighting the records that are highlighted on the table at that given moment. If I sort by observation date, you can see that the newest infestation was July of 2017, and the most recent one was May of 2018. Now, if I go over to the treatments, there were some treatments done. I think that we only have the first one documented on here, the 2017 treatment, but there are some additional ones that are there as well, and I can pop into those records. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the details. Sorry if the noise just got loud. It started raining here at our house, so it's, you might hear some background noise there. So here's the treatment record that was entered. You can see the date that it was treated on, the treatment type, and just a quick reminder about treatments in general. So if you are with your account with iMapinvasives, you need to be part of an organization to be able to enter treatment records, and you can only see the treatment details for other records within your organization. So even though I have a state administrator account, so I can see everyone's treatment records, but only say members of this organization of APIP would be able to see the treatment details. So just a reminder of that. So you have your treatment record, we have our presence record. So here I'll click on the first presence record for that site. This is from Mark Whitmore, definitely a very reliable source for hemlock woolly adelgid. He spotted it on the hemlocks in that area when he was on a hike there. And so he has some details, so you can see where that first infestation was. And then the exciting part is the not detected records. So this is once again sorted by date here, and you can always click on these tabs to resort them. So the most recent one is is 2021, but you can see that there's been quite a few surveys there, all through 2020s. Oh wow! So I can see down in if you look at the very bottom right-hand corner of my screen, it tells you how many results are in this table. So there's 86 not detected records. So there's been a lot of surveying in this area after the treatments have been applied at that one spot. So I like this particular example in the data itself because it really illustrates well that whole process where something was found, there were treatments made, and then there's been years of not detected records following up with that. So what I'm going to do next is walk you through a hypothetical situation of so that you could enter this information yourself. Here, I'm going to go ahead and clear my filter. Oops. Because I sometimes forget to do that, and then I wonder why I can't find everything I'm looking for on the map. Let's see. So I'm going to zoom out and let's say go down to Albany area and find a spot along, let's see, along the Hudson that we could enter some some information on these types of efforts. So I can change, of course, my base map. So I can put on my satellite imagery if I'd like. I can look at the lay of the land. And so now we're going to do our, enter our hypothetical infestation here. So I'm going to I'll turn on our different layers. Actually, I can leave that off for now. So my treatments and my not detected records. And let's say, I'm out hiking in this area and I find a new species. So if I'm doing this all online, this is what I'll walk you through. Some of the mobile apps will also have some of these options, and Mitch will walk you through the distinction like later on. So our really simple observation and not detected mobile app will not have all the data fields I'm going to show you. But some of our more advanced field data collection tools will have them. But everything is available online. And so just walking through our hypothetical here. So if I, came through and say I found a new invasive species that I know is a tier 2 for my PRISM, and say I found it in this area, I'm going to go ahead and, delineate the area of that infestation. I have to pick what species it is. And so this is the highly invasive apic species for testing. So we'll put in that species. You can add the date. So let's say I found this last week when I was hiking. You can also tag projects at this point. Anyone with an IMAP account can create their own projects. And it's just a really handy way to organize your own data if you have a lot of data coming in. So feel free to explore projects and create some if you'd like. But here's the details for my current infestation that I'm mapping out. So I always highly encourage photos. I don't have any. This is just going to my my hard drive or my my network drive. So I don't have any on there right now. But if you can always add a photo that way. very easily. And then we get into some questions that are more specific to this. And I think, traditionally, a lot of times these fields kind of get glazed over because it is super easy to just put in a photo and put in the location of that species and then be done with it. But if you're really looking to assess the effectiveness of a treatment, you need to take the time to record what the status of that infestation is before the treatment. And there are a number of fields. So within IMAP, we have a fake species set up as a terrestrial plant. But if I were, say, to change that to an insect, there would be slightly different data fields being presented here. So let's say for my terrestrial plant, let's say I found 50 individual plants within that polygon. Let's say it's a 26 to 50% coverage. So percent cover is always useful. You can put in an exact percent cover, but I know that it's, it can be somewhat subjective because it's just hard to estimate visually sometimes what a percent cover is, and it's hard to keep that consistent from person to person. So we do have these cover classes. We give you those two different options, either a precise number or a cover class. The distribution is more of a, a subjective one as well, but it's a categorical. And so these might be easier for, for the human brain to process than an exact number of percent cover. But let's say I have, some dense plants and clumps in this area, in this defined polygon. I can add additional comments there. And then I can also add some advanced data fields. So for this evaluation type, we can say, if I know I'm going to be treating this, I'm assessing this before treatment. My follow-up, let's say, I know that this is a management candidate in my scenario. The impact of the invasive, this is always, I think that this is important. This is an open text field. Maybe one of these days we could, have some streamlined responses that people could choose from. But, thinking about, like, is this close to a rare plant population? Something like that. Like, what impact is this invasive having or potentially having on that site? There's a way to record your biocontrol species if you found them at that site. And so, in this case, let's say that that's not, we'll come back to that, but we don't need that for this one. You can select, what life stage that plant is in, and keeping in mind, of course, these questions will be different for insects, and whether this was an intentional planting. And so I'll go on to the next step, which is, kind of reviewing the information that I just entered and completing my record. So when I hit complete, the record is now saved, and I have my presence record there. It also creates a searched area record. We have more details about the data structure of iMapinvasives and other webinars and handouts, but just keep in mind that anytime you create any kind of record within IMAP, a searched area record is created on the back end. I'm going to go ahead and take a look at my presence record, so I can click on that ID number, and this will give me the information that I just entered, just kind of in a summarized way. You could also, this URL is specific to that new ID number that was just created. And so a lot of times I'll send these URLs to partners, like if I want to draw their attention to a particular site or a new record that just popped up. Usually you have to log into IMAP first and then click the link, but the links are really handy for sending those records to people. All right. So we have our our pre-treatment assessment recorded now. And so now we need to record our treatment record. So say we're going back out, I'm going to create a treatment record at the site. And of course, it's for the same species that I just picked. And so I can now draw this, draw my treatment area. Say for whatever reason, I couldn't quite get into that upper spot, so I'm just going to control down in this part of the polygon. But there I have my treatment record. Click next to get more of my details that I want to fill in. So I'm going to say I did this a couple days ago, my treatment. And of course that ended the same day. This is my initial treatment for treatment iteration. Treatment goals, say for this particular one, you know, I might be trying to eradicate it if I was able to get to the whole polygon, but since I couldn't get to everything, I'm going to say containment. And then of course you can add in more comments about that treatment specifically. I'm going to go ahead and go to the next step, which is the treatment type. And this is where you can put in a physical, chemical, or biological control. And so let's say for this one, I do a biological control. I'm going to do a hand pulling. Say there are enough, or you know, a few enough plants that I could do a mechanical, let's see, pulling. So I can document that for disposal methods. Oops. Let's say I'm going to actually bag these and, you know, take them out with the trash because they were in fruit at the time. I don't want to risk reseeding of that population. I click next. I get my summary of what I just entered, so I can complete my record. And now this will open up my my treatment ID. So if I click on that treatment ID, it gives me all those details. You know, what treatment type I use. And if this was chemical or biological control, then of course there would be different questions that you can populate here. Oh, one thing I forgot to point out with the presence record that we started with is that on every record in IMAP, whether it's treatment, not detected, or presence, there's this link to go to the searched area page. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. And on my searched area, this will give me some additional fields that I can fill in. And so all these records, since it's my own record, I'll have the option to be able to edit that record. And I can go to that and, you know, I could select more information, like say this was a terrestrial survey, say I'm looking at the understory. You know, there's just a lot of information that I can additionally fill in about my sampling, weather, if that was necessary for recording, crew information, and so forth. I'll go ahead and cancel that. All right, and just to point out also, you do have a delete option. So if you are testing something out or you do something erroneously, you can always delete your records as well. All right, so I'm gonna say, you know, a few days later, I'm going to go back and, or maybe it's a year later, and, you know, go back and look for that species again. So I do a survey of this area and say best case scenario, I did not find that species that I was looking for. So I'm going to create a not detected record, which allows me to, you know, put some information on the map, or like, you know, draw my polygon on the map where I can indicate, you know, perhaps I widened my searched area to look for this species. And the first thing it's going to ask you, of course, is to define your species. So I did a fake species once again. The amount of time that I searched for it is always important. So you can put it in there in hours and minutes. So let's say I have 1 hour and 30 minutes. Oops. No, I didn't mean to click on that. It has me as the observer, but you can always, you could change that as well and search the IMAP user database. We have our date, project. I can add photos. And I want to draw your attention to the reasons for not detecting. So in this particular scenario, I am presuming that I eliminate this species due to treatment. And so I am going to select that, but just to show you what the other options are, habitat no longer exists. So perhaps you come back and there's a parking lot for a new development, so that invasive species no longer there. You might be there, but it might be a low detectability. You might be there during the wrong time of year. Maybe the plant has already senesced and you can't find it anymore. Or this might be a brand new survey where, say, like with those, a lot of those hemlock woolly adelgid not detected records, is that the species has never been detected here previously. So I'm going to go with that presumed eliminated during treatment or due to treatment and complete my not detected record. All right. And because I put a record on, whether it's a not detected or a presence record for a species on top of a treatment record for that same species, it knows that you're returning to that site. So there's logic in the programming for IMAP that recognizes that. So it says, it looks like you did some work in an area that has been treated before. Can you add some information about the effectiveness of those previous treatments? So I'm going to say yes, this. And what this will do is open up some additional data fields on the searched area of the record I just entered. And so you can see it's called previous treatment follow-up. We have data field of percent treated. So, you know, I wasn't able to treat that northern part of it. So I treated maybe about 70% of that percent killed for my treatment area. Let's say, you know, looks like I have over or close to 100% because I couldn't find any treatment effectiveness comments, post-treatment manager comments, if you have additional information, say from someone who's overseeing this project. And then there are some check boxes about, you know, whether additional treatments needed, were the impacts mitigated for this invasive species that was there, and were any non-target species affected? So, you know, thinking about, did your treatment carry over or have unintended consequences on some of the native species there? All right, and so like I said, that will pop up for both the presence and the not detected records if it's on top of a previous treatment for that same species. Great, so I'm actually going to delete this not detected record. Like I said, you can delete your own and you can delete it due to a test record. And I'll close that out. And then if I go back to the map and I kind of nudge the map a little bit, it will refresh that data there. And so now I have my not detected record is now gone because I deleted that. But say I've come back and I have, you know, instead of not detecting it, I actually detected that record. And so, you know, on top of that treatment and that previous presence, I now have a new presence within that treatment area. So let's say I draw a polygon, and maybe ideally it's just in a little tiny area of that, that infestation. So I'm going to, once again, pick the same species that I'm working on here. I can add my photo. And so we started with 50 plants, but let's say we're just now down to 40 plants. Say it's, you know, we have a really low coverage. I mean, the coverage is, of course, applied within that polygon that I drew. And so let's say, you know, within that polygon, I have like close to 20% coverage, but they're pretty sparse. You know, all that information will be useful down the road. And so I'm going to go ahead and complete my record. And so this should also pop up the not detect or the previous treatment effectiveness record. So I could enter that same information that I showed you before for the not detected records. So they're the same data fields there. But for this is the searched area record, and I can see, you know, I have a presence record for that particular one. So I can go to the presence record I just entered, which is that little diamond shaped one. And within this record, if I hit that edit button at the top, you know, of course I can review some of this information here, and I can, you know, add photos or things like that. And somewhere on here, did I scroll past it too quickly? Oh, the biocontrol species found. You know, and I kind of just breezed over this when I was entering the data, but you can also enter it later. So if you had a biocontrol candidate or agent that you found, you can go ahead and enter that. All right. Great. And, you know, actually one thing that I did forget to show you, I'm going to go ahead and enter another not detected record at this site. Let's say this is for that same species, because I wanted to talk a little bit more about how we mark something as presumed eliminated. So I'm going to say, now I don't want to fill that in just now, but I want to go to this not detected record. All right. So, here's my not detected record. When I entered that record, I could select for myself, I could select for this record why I think that I didn't detect it, and so I think it's presumed eliminated due to treatment. But there's also another flag for not detected records that I wanted to touch on. There is this checkbox that's called presumed eliminated, and this is actually only checkable by the state admins, so myself and Mitch and the members of the IMAP team. And this is when a partner has conveyed to us that they have, say, gone back multiple years, they have not detected this species. For their efforts and their organization, they have determined that this is truly eliminated at this site. So this invasive species is presumed eliminated there. And there's different rules of thumb. Like some people say you need to go back 3 years for invasive plants. Some people say go back 5 years to make sure that the seed bank is eliminated. But of course, it depends on the species and it depends on the site. But you can always communicate to us if there is a successful story where you have presumed or you have eliminated something and you've gone back multiple years and determined that it is gone, then we can actually check this box in your record. And that will actually trigger, your ability to search for that on the map. Currently, the map filter is being redone. And so if I go back to the map here, we have this filtered records component. There is going to be a different tab for not detected records, and presumed eliminated will be an option there. So you'll be able to say, look for all the hemlock woolly adelgid sites where it has been presumed eliminated at that site. So that's really exciting. That's kind of like a first baby step in showing treatment effectiveness. I know it's very, it's very all or nothing. You either got rid of it or you didn't, but it's at least a first step on trying to visualize this information. And so we're really excited about that. And that's why we want to have more data, showing these success stories, because like every time I hear a PRISM call, one of those statewide calls, I hear those success stories when people are talking about them. So we just need to capture that in the data. And currently we do have quite a bit of information from the Adirondack PRISM on presumed eliminated sites, and also from some examples from the giant hogweed control efforts from New York State DEC. So those are all really exciting to be able to see. They're kind of our test runs in a sense of using these data options on the map. And one thing I'll also point out is, even though I created these records by stepping through presence, treatment, and not detected individually, you can also use this multi-record searched area tool if you have all the information in front of you. Say somebody has, over the last month, they've gone out and treated things and, detected and treated and then follow-up surveyed, then you can actually enter that all in one fair swoop. So the benefit to using this tool, if you have all the data in front of you, is that you just draw the polygon once. And so you can copy over that same polygon if you want to. So you can, once I add a presence, say, to the searched area, I can either draw it as, like, say, a new point or polygon within the area that I searched, or I can say I want to use that entire searched area. So I searched this area, and this is where I want my presence record to be. And so that's just really helpful to be able to do that, have that simplicity. And so you can enter a presence record or multiple presence records, and then you can enter your treatment records as well for that same species. And so that definitely comes in handy. And once again, you can use that entire searched area where you can have all that information at once. And then as you step through your treatment type, You can pick your physical, chemical, or biological control. And this is, I just wanted to show an example of when you would be entering, say, a biocontrol release. So if you had something that you were releasing, like we just heard about the Gallulosera beetle, let's say we're releasing that for our fake species, maybe purple loosestrife, you can, enter more information. So say we, these are probably going to be entered as or released as an adult. How many agents did we actually release at this site? And then any additional comments that you might have about the actual release and, where you got the biocontrol agents themselves. So a lot of great information that you can put in there for the biocontrol agents. All right. Well, so that's what I wanted to show you with the data entry. And like I said, we're trying to encourage people to enter more pre and post treatment assessment data so that we can start, better visualizing, this change over time and whether things are effective. But next, I wanted to talk a little bit more about how we're using that data and how you can be using that data. So one of the first things is, how do you get your data back out? So if you've entered a lot of information, you have treatments and so forth, you can use this export tool to export all the data in this area, either as a CSV file or a geodatabase. You can, say, use the current map extents, or you can, just select, you can draw an area around it. Say, I just want to export the data right here. Then I can do that. And then you can export the records, and it'll give you a zip file, because the data files for treatments and presences are going to be separate because there'll be different data types. There are also existing reports. So if I click on that export report tool again, that this information really comes in handy for. So we do have what's called an area treated report. And I know that there was a webinar on the details of this earlier. So, feel free to look back at our archives if you want more details about this. But for now, I'm going to go kind of quickly. I need to select my area. So, say I want to focus in on this site. And this is, really a simple, spatial calculation, essentially. Like, I can constrain it by dates if I want to, and that might be kind of another first baby step at getting a change over time. You could run, area treated. I'm sorry, I guess that would be more for the infested area. But you could look at, say, all your treatments for, 2020, and then compare that to the area treated for 2021. So if I run this report, it'll take a moment to do the calculations. But now it's ready to go. And so I have my area treated report. I wanted the units in meters. And so for this fake species, I have close to 4,000 square meters that I have treated. And so that can be compared to, say, the infested area report, where I can do, a similar setup where I do a fake species. Say I want to include my presence points, if there are just points there for polygons. I can click or select whether I want meters, feet, or yards for my, if I was going to include lines in there, like a buffer around a line. But my actual report out, I could pick acres, I could pick meter squares, so forth. And this is where I was thinking, like, you could change the begin and end date. Say you could do 2 reports, like do an area infested report before your treatment, and then do an area infested report after your treatment. And so we'll let that spin for a moment. And like I said, this is, a simple calculation, essentially. It's looking for that one species that I picked, but you could list all the species in that defined area if you wanted to. And so it's giving you, your estimate. So we're close to 3 acres of that species in that area. And so you can see, like, if you did this before and after, you would get that change. But what we're thinking about, is how do we take this to the next step? Like these are some, like I keep saying baby steps. These are some, very simplified ways of showing that change over time and trying to get at that effectiveness. But, we would like to eventually, whether it's making new reports or using, say, the web map service to bring the data into a custom GIS dashboard, how could we, create some better reports or ways to visualize whether or not these treatments are working, and whether those infestations are getting bigger or getting smaller, and so forth. And we're still working on this, and this is going to be a work in progress over the years. We have we have these different ways of capturing the data, so that's why we're encouraging people to capture that data now. Maybe we need, some way to be able to adjust the time. We could do some type of time slider, some type of report with, using the distribution perhaps within those calculations. So there's lots of ways to try to tackle that. And we actually have a graduate student who will be working on this project. So actually, Mitch, would you mind if I, let's see, if I unshare my screen, can you go back to the PowerPoint? Give them a second there. So we're working with SUNY ESF to try to figure out ways to tackle this question, because it gets complicated fast, right? Like there's so many different scenarios that people are treating and how they're measuring things. And so this also goes, kind of works hand in hand with the metrics project that Nisri and the Blassie Lab are working on. But so the step where we're working with a graduate student, this is Fate Saiwang Nuon, and he is a master's student at SUNY ESF, and he's going to be working on, how to best collect and visualize pre and post treatment monitoring data to be able to, get at these ways of displaying and visualizing success or, challenges that we have essentially, by using GIS and the data that we do have. And so this is kind of our start. He just started this fall. And so we're doing a call for data. We were hoping he could be on this call today, but he has a class right at the same time. So hopefully many of you will get to meet him at some point in the near future, whether, maybe in person, hopefully, at least on webinars and calls. But what we would like to ask for is if you have these post-treatment follow-up data examples or success stories, or stories of treatments that didn't work, we would like that data so that we can start having examples within IMAP to be able to play with, in a sense, in GIS, and be able to try to work out some of the standardized ways of visualizing this information across many different types of projects. And so you can email myself, and you can email Fate with any data leads that you might have. And actually, I'll put those email addresses in the chat box so that they're easy to find. And all right, with that, I will turn it back over to Mitch.
Thanks so much, Jen. And so if anyone has any questions about any of that, feel free to enter those into the chat box. We've had a couple come in so far, and we'll start looking into those in just a few minutes. I'm just going to do a very brief overview of, so Jen just talked about all the sorts of data that you can collect on thinking about the pre and post-treatment surveys and monitoring treatment effectiveness. And so I wanted to quickly go over what tools you can use to enter that data. So we have several different reporting tools, and we have a table of them on our website at nyimappinvasives.org/report-invasive. So we have the simple IMAP mobile app, which allows you to report presence and not detected points. We have IMAP Online, which Jen showed you, which gives you pretty much everything, with the one caveat that you have to be connected to the internet because it's a website. We also now have this Survey 123 form, which pretty much gives you almost all of the data fields online, with the added benefit that you can use it out in the field with no connectivity, if you set it up beforehand. And those three tools are open and accessible to anyone who wants to report data. We do have another tool, it's more advanced, it's called IMAP Mobile Advanced, also abbreviated as IMA. It's within Esri's Collector app. And so while the other tools are open to anyone, this tool, you need to have an ArcGIS online account and have some GIS experience. So it's usually more for PRISM staff or agency staff and some other professionals who use GIS. So if you want more information on that, you would have to email us to get more information on that. For the other three, we have information on our website. And so the table goes through pretty much the different capabilities of each app. But for today's presentation, I also added some stuff on the sorts of fields we talked about today. So in this blue section, I listed out the sorts of fields that Jen has been discussing. So for instance, that distribution field, so trace, sparse, dense monoculture, you can report that on pretty much anything. So even if you're just recording a simple point in the mobile app, you can still fill out this information, which will be useful for assessing change over time. And then for the more like advanced abundance field, like percent cover, number of individuals, any of our advanced tools would work. Same goes for recording the presence of biocontrol or recording the reason not detected. And then these post-treatment fields that pop up when you put a presence or not detected record on top of a treatment record. These fields are only accessible online or using the IMAP Mobile Advanced. So that's just a summary of the sorts of information that you can report using our different tools. And as we're switching to questions, I just wanted to go over our take-home messages. So essentially, it's that you can track management effectiveness in IMAP by doing this pre-treatment, treatment, post-treatment survey cycle and recording those in IMAP using presence, treatment, and presence or not detected records. There are these special post-treatment fields that appear when creating a presence record on top of a treatment record. And then our last take-home message is anyone can record information to allow us to assess change over time. So even if you're not doing treatments, there's some information on infestations that you can enter in for us. And so with that, we can switch over to questions. So if we went through a lot of stuff quickly today, so you can create an account at nyimapinvasives.org, and we have a bunch of help resources on the training tab. And so I'll go over to the questions. And so the first question I saw from Steve Young was, can you do one treatment record for multiple widely separated records on a preserve if you treat them on the same day? Or is it best to do those as separate treatment records for each presence record? And Jen, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Steve. So I guess first of all, it depends, if it's the same treatment type, because that would be, if you had different treatment types for those different treatment records or treatment spots, then you would definitely need separate treatment records. But if it was all the same species and the same treatment type, then it just kind of depends on how detailed you want the records to be for that particular preserve. If you're interested in documenting where those individual treatments were, then you would need to make separate records. But if you're really just interested in, getting that, getting the bare bones information down there that yes, these were all treated, and and I could imagine, especially like if somebody's carrying around a backpack sprayer and just spot treating as you walk through the preserve, then you could absolutely just make one bigger polygon that represents that general area, and a treatment record for those species in that treatment type.
And then, so Steve had another question. When creating a treatment polygon, will all previous records automatically become part of the polygon? Do you want to answer that one too, Jen?
Yeah, sure. So let's see, I'm looking at now when creating. Oh, so there is a way that the so if you create a treatment polygon on top of other, say, presence records that are there for that species, then within the treatment record, it will actually list out all the presence records that that treatment is now applying to, because it looks at date, so it looks at any presence records that have been entered before that treatment date, and then it'll give you a list of them in the treatment record, and you can actually individually click on all those. So it doesn't necessarily become part of the polygon in terms of how it's stored on the back end, but it at least kind of grabs them spatially and gives you a list of all those records that are affected by that treatment. I hope that answers your question, but Steve, feel free to unmute and chime in if I didn't quite answer what you were getting at.
Yeah, that answers my question.
Okay, great.
But I had another one about that. So if I go out afterwards, after I do the treatment, and enter the presence or absence with the IMAP mobile, with the app, can I come back and add more detail to that record?
Yes, you can add more detail, in the presence record. But, I was actually kind of digging into that type of scenario while I was preparing for this webinar. And actually, I don't think that those previous treatment data fields become unhidden. So there's something in the programming logic that I think we need to tweak, because I think that it would make sense that if you went out and collected something with the mobile app and you wanted to enter, those post-treatment follow-up fields later when you got back into the office, like the percent killed and, whether non-target species were affected, those specific fields, I would think that you should be able to enter those. And so that's something that we can address with the programmers and see if that's something that we could eventually get in there, but it would be down the road. But you can always certainly enter the other, like the standard presence data fields or not detected data fields once you get back at your computer.
So you could enter like the advanced abundance fields, or whether biocontrols found, or if you do a not detected, you could enter reason not detected when you get back into the office. So you wouldn't be able to do that in the mobile app, but you could go into that record afterward and add those advanced fields.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you. And then I was just going to talk about organizations quickly, and then I don't see. Oh, so while we're on that topic, I'll just answer one more question. So whether the fields show up in the survey 123 form. So a lot of the fields we've talked about do show up in the survey 123 form, but those post-treatment fields do not, because there's not a capability within that form to do the logic with the identifying when a record is put on top of a treatment record. And then I just want to address one question about the organization. So we've talked about how you need to be part of an organization in IMAP to submit a training or submit a treatment record. But really anyone can join an organization. So there's not really a set list of IMAP partners who are allowed to submit treatments. If your organization is doing invasive species management work, you can ask us to add your organization. And if you're a non-affiliated volunteer doing invasive plant pulls in your yard or something, you can always join our organization called No Organization Affiliation. And you can email us at iMapinvasives at dec.ny.gov for more information on that. And with that, I'll thank everyone for attending. Thank you for your questions. Big thank you to Jen for her awesome live demo and discussing all the different reasons why we should collect this sort of data. And I hope to see a lot of you in the coming months for our continued monthly webinar series. So next month, we'll be talking about spotted lanternfly, tree of heaven, and our grid square mapping project. So I'll stop the recording. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone, for coming.